Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. The global environment is once again at the center of international attention. This time it is because the United Nations Environment Program has released the 7th edition of Global Environment Outlook report during its session in Nairobi. And what this report tells us is both alarming and deeply important because it shows us where the planet is heading and what may happen if we do not act now. So, let's understand the message the world waking up to. According to the Global Environment Outlook report, the greenhouse gas emissions have been rising by 1.5% every year since 1990. As of result, the global temperature touched a record of 1.55 degrees Celsius in 2024. This is not just a number. This rise already intensified the heat waves, storms, floods and the droughts across the world. Scientists now want that if this continues, we will cross 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold permanently by early 2030s and even reach 2 degrees Celsius by 2040. That is a point at which ecosystems begin to collapse unrecoverable. And it is not just the climate. The report highlights one of the biggest crises of our time, that is biodiversity loss. Out of the 8 million species on the earth, 1 million are now already threatened with the extinction, which means nearly 20 to 40% of the world land is degraded, which affecting the lives of more than 3 million people. This means disappearing the forest, dying rivers, degraded soil and eventually which declining our food production. But the crisis is not just only ecological. It is also deeply economic. Because this report talk about extreme weather events. Means extreme weather events are now costing world $143 million every year. Especially air pollution alone cost $8.1 trillion in health related damages in 2090 and 9 million people die each year because of pollution, which compare we can say that is more than from any war, disaster or epidemic. Yet the report gives one powerful reminder. That is, the cost of action is far smaller than the cost of inaction. Which means if the world invests strategically in climate stability, biodiversity and pollution control, it could generate up to $20 trillion every year by 2070. But if we continue on the current path, the economic and ecological loss may become impossible to recover from. And other important finding that we can see in this report also highlights the plastic crisis. That is, 8,000 million tons of plastic now pollute our planet. The toxic chemical from this pollution causes around $1.5 trillion in health-related losses every year. This price we are already paying for convenience. But what does all this mean for us? What are the real impact of environmental degradation on our lives? This report warns that if we are approaching dangerous tipping point, once crossed, they cannot be reversed. For example, melting of ice sheets, collapsing of coral reefs, Amazon forest dieback, these are changes that will not bounce back in human lifetime. If the global temperature continue to rise, the world could face 4% of drop in GDP by 2050 and nearly 20% by the end of this century. This means job losses, unstable market, inflation and widespread poverty. The global economics could face a systematic collapse and we are also losing fertile land at an extraordinary rate, which we can compare the area of size of Colombia or Ethiopia every year. This threatens our agriculture, freshwater availability and food supply chain. When the food becomes scarce, the hunger, conflict and migration will increase. So the report says By 2050, the average food available per person may drop by 3.4%. At first glance, it seems small. But in reality, this could push millions towards hunger and malnutrition, especially in the vulnerable regions. All this comes with a massive financial drain that means trillions of US dollars that could have been used for development, education, healthcare, infrastructure and innovation, but will instead be spent on repairing the damages. So the world needs a transformation, and Global Environment Outlook report tell us what must be done. If you try to understand that report, the first solution which was talked about by this report is economy must shift from traditional GDP to inclusive wealth, which means a system that values the nature, ecosystem and long-term sustainability. The countries must price the pollution, reward the decarbonization and invest in ecosystem restoration. Achieving net zero by 2050 will require a large investment, but compared to the damage we avoid, it is only a fraction. And the other thing we can say that the report shows that the global benefit may reach 20 trillion US dollar annually by 2070, and after that, gain could rise to US dollar or 100 trillion a year. Second thing, we need a revolution in material and waste. Like we know that a circular design, recycling, regenerative manufacturing. These must become the global norms. We know that the plastic must be replaced with the biodegradable alternatives and consumption pattern must change. Third, the energy sector must transform completely. We need to decarbonize electricity, improve the energy efficiency and build a sustainable mineral supply chains. This should prevent 9 million premature deaths by 2050 just by reducing the air pollution. Fourth, our food system must change. Healthier diets, efficient agriculture, reduce the food wastage. This step could lift nearly 200 million people out of hunger, over 100 million out of extreme poverty. Fifth, the environment must actively restored. What we need that a nature-based solution like mangrove restoration, wetlands, revival and reforestation are the among most powerful ways to reduce the climate risk. But none of this can happen alone. The government, companies, civil society, scientists, students, indigenous community, everyone must work together, and the most important message of Global Environment Report is simple. We cannot address the climate, biodiversity and the pollution separately. They must be solved together. Integrated action is the only path to just and a sustainable future. Finally, what this means for India. If we compare this for India, we can say that India needs a clear green GDP framework, one that measures the progress by including capital or natural capital, not just economic output. We need a national circular economic mission, which is covering sectors like plastic, electronics, textiles and construction. Subsidies on fossil fuel must be gradually redirected towards the renewable energy, green mobility and sustainable agriculture. And India must scale up the nature-based solution, treating the mangroves as the coastal defense, treating the wetlands as a source of water security and treating the urban green spaces as a public health infrastructure. In the end, the message of Global Environment Outlook is straightforward but powerful. We still have time to change the direction, but the time is running out. The future of the planet and of humanity depends on the choice we make today. Thank you for listening. I hope this session is helped you to understand what the Global Environment Outlook report really means and why it matters, and how we can all play a part in building a sustainable future. Stay curious, keep learning, and I will see you in the next session. Thank you.